Hey everyone, welcome back to Philosophical Jew. As I'm sure any of you who have been following Jubilee for any amount of time, or Jordan Peterson, you've seen the most recent Jordan Peterson video with, that has been titled One Christian versus 20 Atheists. Now, I just want to start right off the bat with three things you're not going to get from me in this video. One, you're not going to get a Jordan Peterson impression. I am terrible at Jordan Peterson impressions. I cannot do the accent for my life, and I jumble my words more than he does when I try to imitate him because it's hard to follow. Second thing is that you will not get a full-blown critique of Jordan Peterson from me. Not because I don't think he did not do a good job. I don't think this was his best performance. I was not happy with his demeanor. I wasn't happy with how he presented himself. And I will critique him, but it's not going to be a toss Jordan Peterson out completely critique. Now, the third thing that you're not going to get from me is just a complete conclusion on what to draw away from this debate. I think that from everything I've seen, there's been two sides to this whole debate, right? There's been completely tossed Jordan Peterson out, like he's just hit rock bottom and he's just never going to bounce back from this. It's been terrible. He should not be, he should not be sort of looked to for any advice whatsoever anymore. And he is just a has been. He's no longer relevant in that type of way. And, he's a poor thinker in theology and philosophy and in everything else he has people on for. That's that's one side. The other side is sort of apologetic. Like they say they sort of don't see the problem. Like, yeah, he came off a little bit worse than he could have, but they thought his arguments were sound. I'm going to take neither of those approaches. Okay, rather, what I'm going to do is I will acknowledge that I think that in terms of public appearances, this ranks amongst one of his worst public appearances. But I also think it's important to recognize why this one specifically bothers me so much. It's not just because of his demeanor. It's because Jordan Peterson, in this debate, did not adhere to the own rules. I apologize. Did not adhere to the rules that he tells other people to live by. Okay, so Jordan Peterson, when he speaks about ARC, when he speaks about Peterson Academy, when he speaks about giving advice to other people, he always employs some sort of method of telling people that you should approach each other in a way where you're cooperating, right? Like one of his 12 rules for life is assume the person you're listening to knows something you don't. I think most of us can agree that when we saw Jordan Peterson in this most recent debate, he did not employ that rule. Like I think he made it clear that he assumed that the people talking to him did not know what they were talking about. And that's a little bit of a problem because one of his fundamental claims in the video was that when atheists critique God, they don't know the God that they're critiquing. Now, Peterson's conception of God is, I don't even know if it's, if you can sort of make, if you can sort of shape what he thinks God is. I know a few things that I don't believe he thinks God is. Like, I don't think that he believes God is a magical man with a beard in the sky. Fine, that's like one step that should be very clear to most people who have done any research on the topic. But it's not, he hasn't made his position clear enough where I think that you can really say, oh, this is what Peterson thinks God is. Except for in this debate. In this debate, Peterson says flat out, and I think this was a slip of the tongue. I don't know if he actually believes this. And if he does, then I honestly think he's a little bit theologically confused, or he has what to learn yet about God. So he calls God in this debate, he says God is conscience. And I'm a follower of Maimonides in a lot of places, and Maimonides sort of tries to take people off of this line of thinking. The idea of God as conscience comes from some sort of misunderstanding of the active intellect, which is a concept from Plato, and it's just a whole it's a whole it's a very complicated topic that I won't get into now. But Peterson clearly does not. does not follow his own rules here. He's not coming into this with, as he says, with the spirit of play. He's not trying to build something. He's trying to win a debate. He's trying to present. I don't know that he was trying to do this with his in his pristine condition, right? Like I think that Peterson has become the type of person where if something is not in pristine conditions to his liking or to his familiarity, he's not going to do a great job most of the time. And it's sad. I think that that's just an effect of everything he's gone through health wise and everything he's gone through in the public sphere, right? It's not easy being where he's been and, going through what he's gone through. But that being said, I don't think it excuses the behavior we've seen. And if Peterson somehow listens to this, my message would just be, something that I heard from a rabbi whose name is Rabbi Dweck about leadership. Jordan Peterson, you have people who look up to you. And whether you like it or not, these people will emulate you in some way. People will try to emulate you. You you stretched yourself to every domain imaginable in your podcast. You bring people on who, from topics such as nuclear power, to history, to psychology, to philosophy, and you've dipped your toe in sort of every pool, right? You are a psychologist, so people who look up to you might not be able to differentiate yourself from what your profession is, from you know, what your skill comes from, like your psychology, and they'll take your word on everything else as well. So what happens is that either people become disillusioned with Peterson because they hear one of his takes on other topics, or they just don't think that his takes on psychology are good, or they think that he's too right wing, or they think that he's too, sort of all over the place. To me, Jordan Peterson is I think he's just gone through a lot. As you can see, on the top left over there. I actually don't know how that's registering to whoever's watching this top right, top left. I have a mug with Peterson's musical logo on it. Clearly, I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson. I really he helped me in life with struggles that I've had. I've listened to his lectures. He helped me understand metaphor in a much deeper way. He helped me. He helped me with his 12 rules for life, and I've learned a lot from him. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to judge Peterson by his worst moment. I don't think that would be fair. And I understand that this is not an objective claim. I don't think that I'm being objective when it comes to Peterson. I'm just saying it like I see it. I don't, other people can see it totally differently. Maybe there is good reason that Peterson shouldn't have as big of a following as he does. Personally, to me, I think Peterson's a net positive. I know many people who have said otherwise, and sometimes they raise really good points, and I don't really have what to respond with. But to me, the reason Peterson's such a net positive is because I do think that if you can filter past all the extraneous activities Peterson has taken on himself, such as Jubilee, even like anything in the realm of really outside of psychology and outside of just, maybe the basic fundamentals of ethical philosophy. I think Peterson's very knowledgeable and I think he's wise in a lot of ways. But if you can filter past all that, past all the things that he takes on that are extra, that just he shouldn't be, too involved with, I think that you have someone who's really influenced a lot of people for the better. And I think that this culture that we have on judging people by their worst moments, immediately reacting to a person in order to draw a conclusion about them from one instance of many instances, is, I don't think it's a healthy environment to cultivate. I don't think it's a healthy environment to be a part of. This reaction video is really born of a desire to make it clear that you don't need to judge Peterson by one video. And you don't need to judge the people, the atheists in that video by one video. You don't need to judge anyone by one video. It's sort of it's the spirit with which, I mean, to borrow Peterson's own line, right? Like, I think that Peterson does have a spirit of trying to help people. I think that's what he tries to do a lot. But leadership is about emulation. Sorry, I realized I never finished that thought about the rabbi. Rabbi Dweck pointed out once that if you're in a position of influence, in a position of leadership where the world sees you, how, no matter how your own character may be, no matter what your personality is, you have a responsibility, you have an obligation to present yourself as someone who is worthy of leadership. And I think that in this video, Peterson unfortunately failed in that respect. I can't say anything else. Like, Peterson, whether he likes it or not, he is a thought leader. Whether we like it or not, he's a thought leader in a lot of circles. So we're gonna need to either forgive Peterson and not judge him by his worst moment. We can write him off as well. We can blindly defend him. I just think the healthiest option is to be real. Like, if Peterson is a net negative and you really think that, that's fine. Like, that's your position to take. But if you're taking it from one video, I think if you're like letting one of his opinions or one of his statements really derail his whole being, I don't think that's a healthy way to approach life. We we tend to write people off based on one moment, based on one thing that they did that we didn't like. I do this too. I haven't done it with Peterson because Peterson's influenced me better for the better. I can't say that I haven't done it with other people. I can think of about two people I know that I did that with off the top of my head, and perhaps that was wrong. That's something that I'm working on. But I don't think that it's healthy to look at a video where someone's clearly not at their best, though you know that they've done better in the past and they, you know, even if they've hit rock bottom, let's say, that's not a sign of who they're to end up being, right? Like, everyone has a path to redemption. A lot of people have a path to redemption, right? Like, if there's one message we all feel in some way, it's that we ought to believe people have a path to redemption. And I don't think Peterson necessarily needs to redeem himself, but I do think that Peterson has some demons he needs to face. I'll end with sort of one small thought. There is a Jewish poet from I forget the exact century, I think somewhere between the ninth and 12th century, maybe ninth and 13th century. His name is Ibn Gabirol. So he lived in the Islamic territory in Spain. He's one of the greatest Jewish poets who ever lived. And yet we know, based on his poetry, shout out to the Rishonim podcast, for any Jews listening, great podcast. But Solomon ibn Gabirol, Shlomo ibn Gabirol is his name. Solomon ibn Gabirol is the way you would say it in English. He wrote a lot of very beautiful poetry, and he had a very hard life. And he was very knowledgeable, very wise, a very deep and whole person. But unfortunately, as was said by a few of his successors, I suppose, if a few generations after him, he never really did seem to defeat his demons. He never really did seem to overcome what was ailing him and what made him act certain ways in front of other people. Because though he was wise, though he was a person of much depth, though he was a person of great reflection and thought and philosophy, there was just some part of him that couldn't overcome his inner demons. I don't know if that's true. I don't know anything. I don't know him personally. I've gathered that it can be true. It's definitely a possibility. But I hope that, unlike the Jewish poet, I hope that Jordan Peterson does overcome his inner demons. I hope he takes the time to understand his position, to maybe take a little bit of responsibility off of himself and, to present himself and what he has to offer in a far better light than he did in this video. And I believe he can. Perhaps that's idealistic of me, but I think that we owe it to people to believe they can redeem themselves and, to ourselves, to other people. And I think that we ought not be too hasty to judge. Um, that's just my thoughts. Thoughts of no, there's no script to this, obviously. Just had an urge to speak about this today and decided to record. I hope something worthwhile came of this video. I hope it gave you something to think about. And I do hope that we learn to not judge a person by their worst moments. Shout out to Ted Lasso for that specific realization. I think that was a great moment for those who understand what I'm talking about. It's a great show, Ted Lasso, and if you haven't watched it, you definitely should, because there's a lot of wisdom there and very practical wisdom. And that's just one of the things I think we can take away, you know. Anyways, I actually have to run because I'm recording this right before the holiday of Shavuot, which is yeah, I guess look it up. It's called the Festival of Weeks in English. It's too hard to explain right now. Anyways, this was fun. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next time. See you in the next one. See you next time. I switched in the middle. All right. Bye, everyone. Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Philosophical Jew podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I have spent many months creating Philosophical Jew, but nearly a decade preparing for it. In addition to the Philosophical Jew podcast, there is also a Substack. The Substack is a platform I use to write on various topics in Jewish and regular thought in the world. Topics such as philosophy and theology primarily. If this interests you, check it out at philosophicaljew.substack.com. Additionally, you can find me on Instagram at a philosophical Jew, and on X as a philosophical Jew, and on Spotify for the audio versions, and on YouTube for the video versions of the podcasts. Occasionally, I do reaction videos, and have a few more coming up. If you enjoyed this content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Have an amazing day.